UPS flight taking off around 5:15 this afternoon crashed upon takeoff en route to Honolulu, Hawaii. The death toll, according to Governor Andy Beshear, at 7. I do want to sort out the confusion there because in the beginning of the mayor's press conference, he said the death toll was at 4, and we have kind of pieced that together because he said the 4 did not include anyone on the plane and that it was expected to rise. The governor may have included those, the 3, possibly. I can't say definitively. We know that there are 3 crew members on the plane.
That plane.
And so that there may be 3 other people there. And either way, the governor has said he expects the death toll to continue to rise because now we are moving into the next phase of this, which is into the formal search.
Right. So our fire chief spoke a little bit about that. He said the fire now is almost totally contained. So that is allowing firefighters to now come in and do a thorough, extensive search of that area. He said that fire covered nearly a city block.
Wow.
So just imagine the catastrophe and the damage there and the potential loss of life. But we have heard this time and time again from all these press conferences and officials saying this is the death toll, it might rise. And so that is the fear there, that when fire crews go into these areas to be able to search, that they might find additional victims. And on that note, the fire chief also said there are still some hot spots in the area, but the real sad, heartbreaking thing here is that there still could be additional victims that we don't know about because we have heard from family members who still haven't been able to get in contact with their loved ones.
And Addie Shaney is following that into the story. We're going to check in with her shortly. Some of the details in this, that the plane went down not on the runway at the airport, that it crashed short of the runway, about 3 miles, or it was 3 miles south of the airport, right? And so we know that 2 businesses at least were impacted. One, a petroleum recycling center, and we learned from the fire chief that propane and oil tanks ruptured as a result of the fire. Again, that at least controlled at this point in time, and also an auto salvage yard taking a hit from the explosion as well. Important note also that we've learned new that the airport is going to open tomorrow, but the airport director telling us to expect delays and even cancellations of some flights.
And that just shows too the airport itself really not impacted by this crash because the plane took off, caught fire somehow, exploded, and then came down south of the airport. And they have said in a previous press conference that the runway that plane took off from is open again. Obviously the airport is still shut down tonight, but that runway is back open. But the catastrophic damage left behind just south of the airport still there, the fire covering a city block, hundreds of firefighters, or I'm sorry, about 100 firefighters still on scene searching now that the fire is mostly contained.
Let's bring in Lieutenant Colonel, retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Sean Dolly, and aviation, not just aviation, but aviation safety expert. The operation out there is kind of shifting, right, from the getting out the fire and life and safety now to the search. Kind of walk us through what that shift looks like with 100 people on the ground.
Yeah, there's difficulty in coming up with words that don't sound just as morbid as the process would actually be, right? You know, originally it's hopefully a rescue operation, and then at some point it begins to transition to, in some areas, a recovery operation. And when you do something like that, I've been using the word methodical throughout the evening because that's probably the best way to describe the process. They'll use some sort of grid pattern to make sure that they're only traipsing over given areas as few times as possible. And as they go grid by grid, block by block, they can annotate, okay, this has been checked, this has been checked, as opposed to people may envision like what it looks like when they're looking for a missing child in the woods, people just walking around with flashlights. No. Much more deliberate in how they approach it. And so they use, geometry to sort of preemptively map out the area. And then as they go square by square, they can annotate, what they have checked and what still remains to be checked.
What kind of undertaking is that? Because as Fallon just told us and reminded us, like this fire or this scene is a city block, and a city block that was populated because it was 5:15 in the afternoon on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
That's a daunting task.
Yeah, and again, I'm trying to be gentle in my language. The nature of the kinetic action of the impact and the explosion doesn't mean that you're going to be able to readily identify potentially all of the remains you're looking for. I'll maybe just leave it at that, if that's okay.
Well, we understand what you're saying.
And so, but as is the case, there are people who are trained to do that and do that in a professional manner. That's tough duty. I think one thing we should be cognizant of is that, as I mentioned in my last segment, what makes these people extraordinary is that they're ordinary. They're built out of the same DNA basically as we are, and they go out and they do this. And so certainly the people that have been responding since 5:15, who will be responding until the small hours of the morning, who will continue to respond into the next day and the next day, I will continue to lift them up in prayers for the daunting emotional challenge that they are carrying on behalf of all of us, on behalf of the casualties, and on behalf of the family of those who've been affected.